This is the Organizational Health Advantage podcast with Keith Hadley and James Felton, principal consultants at Table Group. They're in the business of coaching leaders to build strategic focus and cultural alignment that leads to amazing results. This podcast is for leaders who are looking to increase productivity and morale while decreasing politics, confusion, and unwanted turnover. Welcome to the Org Health Advantage.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Org Health Advantage, where it's our job to dissect world-class leadership across different industries and settings. We'll be chatting with Jon Brady, one of our favorite clients. He's the president of Midtown Athletic, which has 8 very high-end fitness centers in the Midwest and East Coast. We'll be discussing Jon's evolution as a leader, why he decided to shrink his leadership team by 2/3, why he feels it's so important to identify and clearly communicate what's important strategically and culturally within an organization, and why he's so glad he did this work prior to 2020. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Keith, Jon, and myself. Welcome, Keith. It's good to have you.
Thanks, James. Always great to be on this podcast with you.
It's good to have you on again. We are with our client, Jon Brady, who is the president of Midtown Athletic. And we've spent a lot of time with Jon, working with him and his team and helping them, but also phone calls, coaching calls, where we talk about a wide range of things. So we've been talking about having Jon on for a long time, and it's good to have you on, Jon. Welcome.
Well, thanks, James. And Keith, it's really good to be here. And hopefully I can impart some knowledge and some wisdom and help other people. And certainly the way that you guys have helped me and helped us craft Midtown Athletic Clubs over the last 2 years at least. It's been phenomenal. So looking forward to it.
It's been a lot of fun for us too. And as we've gotten to know you and your team and a lot of people within your organization, we've really enjoyed that time with you. Clearly, if you're listening, you picked up on the great accent that Jon has. Jon is from New Zealand. And just a little background on, you started out basically running a rugby club. I'm going to have a lot of people on this podcast, and none of them will have that background.
That's true. It is a little unique, I guess. In fact, before that, I started out teaching physical education and mathematics. So I came out of university with an education degree. And I taught 8, 9, and 10-year-olds, which some would say is very similar to running a business.
Absolutely.
And making sure that we were, controlling the chaos in a classroom. So I went on from there to run a professional rugby organization. So I was a CEO of Bay of Plenty Rugby in New Zealand, and which is it's one of the, I think it's probably the 5th or 6th largest in terms of player numbers in New Zealand, in terms of regions or areas, but had never, really hit the heights of what it could achieve due to a lot of politics and infighting, and it's a very large. In New Zealand terms, it's a large geographical area. It spreads over a lot of land in New Zealand terms, but it was an excellent experience and exposure for somebody coming into a very different environment in terms of leadership perspective.
Jon, one thing I learned in talking to you about that experience is in the U.S., when we think of a professional sports team, it's a very different model than what your rugby organization was. It was a top to bottom from youth sports all the way up to professional competition.
That's right.
Just give us like a perspective on that.
Yeah, sure. So if you could imagine the Chicago Bears, let's take them. I mean, I'm based in Chicago. So take a professional football organization. They have a professional team. In New Zealand, we had a professional team that was from our region. So was the region of Bay of Plenty, which is akin to a state, so Illinois. But we also had a development team underneath them, a B team, if you will, that we ran as a semi-professional team with a lot of development players and players that were up and coming. So we had a team there and all the coaches and everything that was assigned to that team. We also had a women's semi-professional team. So women's rugby is fairly big. So that fed into our organization. And then below that, we had representative teams. So you would represent the state or the organization from under 18 down to under 12. So U12, so kids. And we had under our remit all of the age group teams down to small blacks, which is 4 and 5 year olds playing. So it's when we first organised rugby in New Zealand. It's organised rugby from a 4-year-old level, and the games and the tournaments and the every Saturday morning, and we would organise them within our region for all age groups up to and including our professional team. So adult clubs. So we had 28 clubs that fed into the professional team. So all these tiers underneath the professional team all fed players. They're all designed to develop and coach and feed players through to that professional team, which would then play in our national competition. So, and I was the CEO of that organization. So it was very far-reaching and very down deep into the community of New Zealand, and community rugby clubs in New Zealand are the heart and soul of lots of small towns in New Zealand.
It's amazing because the context there is like if the Chicago Bears is responsible for not only all the local colleges but all the Papa Warner leagues all the way down to the 5-year-olds that are interested in football, but it helps me understand your perspective on you have to grow talent from within.
Yeah,
you're not recruiting the best players from other states. You literally are finding and developing.
You're finding kids and developing them right from a very young age. Our development pathway is actually, in fact, we initially, historically in New Zealand, it was always around high schools. So it was always focused on high school kids. The problem we had at Bay of Plenty, because we weren't one of the big 5 provincial centres, we were one of the big cities, so to speak, is that we had, by the time the kids got to high school, they were already targeted by the top 5 teams. So you can imagine if there's a kid playing high school in Illinois and the Bears had not tapped him up and already got him on some sort of development contract, the New England Patriots, boo hiss, would fly in and grab him and take him back to the Belichick way. It's sort of a little like that. And so we got really smart at identifying talent down at the 11 and 12-year-old age group, which was, it was at some point it was deemed a little early and a little heavy-handed, but it was the only way we could compete was by, and it wasn't about payments or contracts or anything like that. It was about winning hearts and minds. It was about, here's our program for your son or your daughter and playing, growing through the sport. And we think they've got they're showing the skill set and the desire to want to be better players. And we would, at every stage, we would make sure that they had the tracksuit, the jacket, the bag, the backpack, whatever it was that made them feel proud and made them feel a part of something. And it's that community, connecting that community to the overall professional team brand. And thinking about it, the Chicago Bears have got a lot to learn. The NFL's got a lot to learn about growing players and developing them. But that's what we had to do to compete. And in fact, one of my favorite books at the time was, Small is the New Big. I don't know if you guys have read that, but the book called Small is the New Big. And it's a business book, really. But it was, for us, it was, how do we take advantage? How do we find our advantages? We're not one of the biggest players in the field. We're not one of we're not one of the biggest competitors, but we have inherent advantages being able to be nimble and being able to adjust quickly.
Yeah. And
being able to focus on, what is it that we are truly good at, that we can truly be best in class at. And for us, it was really, we see these kids on the field at 11, 12, 13-year-olds. We can, with a bit of, human resource devoted to going out and standing on the side of a muddy rugby field in the middle of winter with a clipboard, we can figure out, pretty quickly who these kids are and how far we think they could go. Yeah. And then it's about, being human and standing in front of people. And, I did many presentations to rugby clubs where we would sit there and say, well, look, this is you want us to give you development money. That'd be great if I had a whole lot of development money. I just don't have it. We have to do this. We have to be, this is hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
We're going out here and I'm telling you, this is the development plan and this is what we're trying to do. And I need your help. And you're volunteers. So I get it. You can choose not to do it. But if you truly believe in what we're trying to do and you believe that the sport helps develop kids for future life and helps create people who can be good teammates and good leaders, and not just in the rugby field, but in the greater community, then this is all about our community. Think about this as community development, not rugby development.
Yeah.
And so we sort of sold it in based on that, which it was what we had to do to compete.
That's so
by the
cool.
time, after I was there for about 5.5 years. In my last year, we won the national championship and the Ranfurly Shield, which is equivalent of the NFL for the first time ever.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
A lot of homegrown players.
I knew about this experience that you had, and you talk so fondly of it, and I know why. What I hadn't connected the dots on is, you go from this to then being a leader in different fitness companies, regional director, COO, and now president of different companies. And that experience with the rugby club seems like a really good experience for someone who has to run different locations. You're not in a specific location just running that club. You're running multiple locations in multiple cities, almost like running multiple programs in the rugby field.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was really great exposure to that, and it was it had its ups and downs as all roles do and all challenges do. But the key part was identifying what are the key levers we can pull.
Yeah.
What are the key influences? Who are the key influences we need on side to make sure that we get our program running, and identifying who those people are who can, who've got your back and who can support you to make sure that your vision gets delivered at the hyper local level. That means when we talk about a health and fitness company now, we have clubs all over the country. It's identifying who are those people within those teams who believe deeply in what your purpose is, and believe that that the core values and the purpose that we set out to try and achieve matter.
It's amazing as I'm listening to you, John, seeing how naturally all these things flowed into the role that you're in now that we've experienced you in. It's like these are like core leadership philosophies. Folks in Chicago know Midtown Athletic Club, but people listening outside of Chicago don't. Maybe just take a minute and just give us like a couple of quick headlines on who is Midtown Athletic Club.
Sure. So Midtown Athletic Club is, we have 8 locations across the United States and Canada. They're all large premium end health clubs or sports resorts, we like to call them. They are full service, very high end luxury sports resorts with everything from retail stores to restaurants, hotels, swimming pools, indoor and outdoor pools, all the fitness studios and things that you would imagine a high-end luxury health club would have. And really, we've had them described as which I think is an interesting description, as a cruise ship that just doesn't move, doesn't leave dock. But you can go on board and you can go on and you can do everything that you would want to do from a health and wellness perspective. And it's totally cashless. It's you use your credential, your wristband, which we all members get, and it's connected to your credit card, and you literally buy a coffee with it, or you have a 3-course dinner with it, or you pay for personal training with it, or a massage, or you buy something in the store, or pay for your kids' tennis lessons or swimming lessons or whatever it is you want to do, all within that facility. And it's they're big facilities. They range from a couple of 100,000 square feet as their smallest to nearly 700,000 square feet at our flagship club in Chicago.
When you talk about the sports resort and high-end premium luxury, you're right. And knowing the club so well, at least the one in Chicago that Keith and I have done a lot of work with you at, I go back to the first time I talked to you and I said, John, I belong to a really nice club. I won't mention it, but it's nationwide. I would imagine your club is like this. And I just remember you saying, no, we're a couple of steps above that one. and I'm like, okay, like patting yourself on the back. And then we went to that club and I'm like, oh, I think it's like 3 or 4 steps above that. And I'm paying a boatload of money to be at my club. I'm like, oh my gosh, this really is a sports resort.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting part about it is it's been an evolution. Midtown started as a company in 1970. So we're 50 years old.
Yeah.
And it's been a 50-year evolution. We started out as a tennis club, a single tennis club in downtown Chicago. It was the largest indoor tennis club in the world at the time it was built. Had 18 indoor tennis courts and, would play host, to the world's best tennis players. Arthur Ashe played there. Martina Navratilova played there. Andre Agassi played there. John McEnroe. It's just a who's who of tennis, really. We were constantly evolving the tennis experience. Billie Jean King said, that Midtown is the standard that all tennis clubs worldwide need to be measured against.
Wow.
And she's played tennis her whole life all over the world.
Yeah.
And it was because we kept looking to improve. Yeah. It was in our DNA. Tennis was our DNA, but really there wasn't tennis. It was really about constant improvement and looking to evolve and never settle for second place in anything. And so when we added fitness, in the 80s, when fitness was becoming more of a popular thing to do outside of just a spit and sawdust gymnasium, it was really, we decided that we had to add and do it well, and we've continued to do that. So the new evolution, the sports resort evolution, which came to being in 2017 and with the opening of Midtown Chicago, or the reopening of Midtown Chicago, the flagship club there, had started about 4 years earlier, and when I started. So I was brought on board to help drive that accountability and performance so that we felt comfortable spending the amount of money we wanted to take this industry to the next level.
Yeah.
And we started looking at the boutique studios that were cropping up at that time all over the world, not just here in the US. We traveled extensively to go and see new concepts and meet with people and understand why people were flocking to these studios and why they were considering them, why there was a perception that they were better than what you could get in a traditional health club, who had studios as well. And then when you looked at the studios, you walked into a boutique studio, which is only about one experience. It's a singular experience. It's hyper-focused on delivering that experience to that community.
Yeah.
And, in lots of ways, it was reminiscent to me of walking into some of those rugby clubs and just, let's get hyper local here. What is it that we can do to improve your community? How can we use rugby to improve your community and develop it? And so they got very good at being very specific and very targeted. The downside is, it's one modality of exercise. You're doing one thing over and over again. Doesn't matter, how good it is only one thing. And so we looked at that and thought, well, what if we could package some of these experiences and deliver this experience with these rock star instructors and teachers into our new concept, the sports resort, which we felt was would elevate the market and set us on a very different path from the rest of the industry. So that's really what we did. We really looked at what was happening in the industry around us. How do we utilize that? How do we lean in take advantage of that. And we went out and we asked a lot of questions. We asked a lot of dumb questions, and we learned a lot. And we came back and we packaged it. And we decided that if we were going to package this, the good thing about boutique studios is they were charging a lot of money.
Yeah.
If you go and do one class at a boutique, it's like $30 to $35 a class. Yeah. You can buy a whole health club membership for that in some places. And so we figure that, people are paying, if they're doing one class or two classes a week, there's an opportunity for us here to set our brand and our market at the $200 plus point, and throw it all into one, one facility.
Yeah.
But the pressure comes at that point to say, now you got to deliver. It's easy to build it. I mean, it's expensive, but it's easy to build. That's the easy part. The hard part is delivering those experiences, crafting those experiences, and making sure you consistently hold people to those standards. And that's the tough part.
Well, and the last little, I mean, it's not a plug. This is true about who you are and the resort style locations. But that hotel at the location in Chicago is one of my favorite hotels. And I travel all around the country and go to some really nice hotels. And I mean, that is a really, really nice hotel. And here we are talking about health clubs, but you've got a great piece of property there with that hotel as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think the hotel is a differentiator for us in lots of ways. It changes the business from being a health club to being a hospitality location, or an entertainment location even. And I think that it's something that we were toying with for probably a good year before we committed to it. We did a bit of research on the hotel market in Chicago. Obviously, I think actually the Chicago hotel market is has one of the largest number of beds anywhere in the world.
Oh wow!
For as a city, as one of the major cities, it's huge. And so it was like a question for us. Are we dipping our toe into waters that we're going to get eaten pretty quickly? But what we did love is, we loved seeing the opportunity because it's incremental revenue. In some ways, we already have a reception desk, we already have a front desk, we already have housekeepers, cleaners, we already have facilities teams. We already look after a big building, and so it was for us. It was a fairly logical extension of that. We thought our margins would be pretty good, and we have a captive, in some cases, audience that we can communicate to and market to. And a number of, when you're at the high price point in a market, a number of those people are going to be traveling for work or have businesses that have people traveling into Chicago for work.
Absolutely.
So it was, we felt that there was a risk worth taking, and it's paid off in spades. It's been very, very successful.
That's great. Yeah, it's really nice. So I want to go into the work that you did prior to COVID. We'll get into COVID, but I would think that work really ended up being more useful than you even thought as you went in, as we went into COVID. I mean, you've said a lot of great things about this work before, but this mastering the 4 disciplines of organizational health that we did with you and helped you with and your team. Just talk first about identifying the team and building them up, and then that high level strategy around answering those 6 critical questions. But any of that, talk about what you did before COVID happened and how you evolved your leadership, the leadership of the team, and so on.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a journey that I think a lot of people go through in terms of leaderships as you develop and as you learn and as you adapt to what the team's needs are. And really, I don't think I'm any different from any other leader. And you try and take on too much, in terms of management responsibilities and your direct line reports and things like that, because you want to stay in touch with everything and you want to have your fingers on everything. And you've got this vision and you've got this passion and drive for what you do. And so it's natural that you want to be involved in everything. And at the time when, we were just opening Midtown Chicago, the flagship club, and we'd been through everything, I think I had 18 direct reports. And, in hindsight, it even sounds ridiculous saying it, but at the time I thought I was doing it well. I really thought that I had this under control. Little did I know, I was just driving everyone nuts. But it was. I had general managers reporting into me in a number of all of our locations. I had national directors of tennis and fitness and food and beverage and sales and marketing and marketing team, people, IT, finance. Everybody was literally everyone reports to me, which I thought was the thing to do. I thought, oh, that's good. Everyone's a direct line to me. It's a flat structure. You talk about this flat organization, blah blah blah. Little did I know I wasn't giving anyone any benefit of my time or my expertise or my thoughts or anything. I was putting out fires, and I was just joining meetings to say I was in a meeting. And I met with Keith at one point because it got so bad I had to reach out to somebody. So it happened to be Keith. I reached out actually to the table group, and because I read Pat's book on the plane. I'd read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and I'd read the employee engagement, and I'd pick them up in the airport when I saw them, and I'd read them on the plane. And I used to like them because I could do it on a plane ride. I could read them on a plane ride, and then I could sort of make notes in it, and I could read it on the way back. And by the time I got home again, I thought I had a pretty good handle on stuff. And at one point, I just when we were launching Chicago, I just sat down and said, I can't do this anymore. I don't feel I'm contributing. I don't feel I'm being a good leader. I don't feel I'm just not adding any value. I'm being here, but I feel like I'm a hamster in a cage or on one of those running wheel things. And I didn't know who to reach out to. I didn't know who to talk to. I'd read all the books. I got more business books in my library than you could shake a stick at. I could start a library here. I've read them all, and nothing was giving me clarity. Nothing spoke to me. And I went back. I spoke to people that I'd worked with in the past about, what did we do well? What did I do well? What am I good at? What am I not good at? I was sitting on a plane. It was a run. We were leaving Chicago, and I'd picked up one of Pat's books at the airport, and I was sitting on the runway.
Was that the one you saw?
It was the Advantage. Yeah. It just come out. It was brand new. Just come out. And so I sat there on the runway, and I had extra time because we were delayed for an hour on the runway. So I was sitting there, and I read it. I managed to read it twice before we took off, pretty much. And I got to our destination. I think I was flying to Florida. I think a club down in Florida, and I got there, and I'd scribbled notes all over this book, and I'd looked at the back page, and it had consulting services by the table, and I'd never thought about it before. I thought he's this author, Pat, blah blah blah. I didn't think much about it. Jim Collins doesn't have a phone number that you can call at the back of Good to Great. There's no. I looked for it. It's not there. So so I thought, oh, I've got nothing to lose. I'll give them a call. So I rang the office, and they connected me with Keith. And I think that by the end of that week, Keith was in Midtown office, his corporate office, at the whiteboard, looking at me like I was insane, and thankfully pointing me in a new direction. And I think, Keith, your words were, you don't have a what did you say? You don't have a
metrics problem. I think you have an alignment problem.
You have an alignment problem. You don't have a metrics problem. You've got more metrics than you know what to do with. You can measure everything, but you have an alignment problem. And a clarity.
And I remember saying, I think the team is a little big. And I remember you just kind of dropped your head on the table and it's like, yes, okay.
Guilty as charged, Your Honor. And so that was part of the process.
What I was going to say is, like, Jon, there's like 2 words that come to mind, 3 words. You've already used one to describe yourself. The one is passion. You are absolutely passionate about what you do. But the other 2 words that come to mind is you are so open. You're an open book, but you are just so open to new ideas, to learning, and just the tremendous courage. That's the 3rd word that you then embarked into, what would be sort of a new chapter.
Right.
But to kind of address that team of 18, that was not an easy thing to do.
It was not easy. So that was the first big challenge, was really identifying, in fact, identifying the team one wasn't the hardest part. It's the communication afterwards. It's the follow-up to that.
Yeah.
And I think that, when you've got people who have worked with you and for you for a long time, and some of those people had worked with me for a number of years, and in fact, some of them had followed me from previous companies, and then to be able to have to tell them that, look, I'm changing the structure of the organization. You're not going to report directly to me anymore, and you're going to have to report into this other person, was a big shock. It was a big culture shock as much as anything else, because I had built this organization myself. I'd built it from the ground up to be a flat structure, believing that it meant that I was closer to everything going on, and I could, therefore keep everything aligned. But little did I know that I was doing the opposite in lots of cases. I wasn't letting people flourish, and there wasn't an alignment, because everybody stopped because I was the bottleneck. And so having the communication with people about, look, this is the structure we're going to take. We're going to have an executive team of 6, and everybody is going to organize into those 6 functions, and we're going to feed people through that funnel, and we'll figure that out as we go a little bit. But you have to bear with me, and this is it's going to be a journey. It's going to be an evolution, and I'm asking for your blessing, really. Asking for your help in making this work, and also in your help in understanding why I need to do this, and that explanation around why was really important.
The reality is, like, you really lived out that principle of, like, the solution today will become the problem of tomorrow. And so, as you grew, as you scaled, like, having all these direct reports made a lot of sense, but then the business just scaled beyond that. And I think one of the things that we talked about that I remember being a big lift was that you never had time to think about strategy anymore. You were just going from fire to fire to fire to fire, meeting to meeting, meeting to meeting. And it was like, you're such a strategic thinker, and you're always way out on the horizon in your thoughts, but you just didn't have bandwidth to do that. And so it was that, it was that structure became the bottleneck, because, you were at the center of the organization, and you needed a team in the center of the organization. And so many leaders struggle with that. That is one of the most common conversations that we get into with leaders, is the makeup of the team.
Yeah. And I think that is crucial to understand, that you get to a point, it happens over time. It gets to a point, and you can't even recognize it, because you're in the weeds, or it's like you're in the forest and you can't see the trees. You're just right there. And so to be able to take a step back and a step out, so you can think about the direction, and you can think about who you want on your team delivering, for you, and you provide the guide rails. If you think about it from a bowling analogy, your 10-pin bowling is, I'm the guide rails. I'm sticking the guide rails up, and ball's not going in the gutter. And there are no gutter balls here, so we just keep aiming for those pins, and sometimes we'll hit them dead center, and sometimes we won't. But at least we're not going to get any gutter balls. So the ability to step back is really hard, and it does take courage, and to have those conversations takes courage, and they don't all go the way you want them to go. I mean, and some people are expected to take it really well, didn't take it well at all. Some people took it, stoically. Some people took it defensively, and some people took it aggressively. And it wasn't the people I would have expected in some cases, or a lot of cases. But I remember Keith said to me when I called him after that first meeting, I said, look, we had everyone in the room. I talked about it. I explained the why and what we're doing, the structure. And this is what happened. And I got attacked from a couple of people. I got like really negative feedback and really pushback. And he said, well, what did you expect them to stand up and applause? What did you expect to happen? I'm like, Yeah, that's exactly what I expected to happen. I want this standing ovation. I'm like, oh my God, you're changing these people's lives, and not all in a good way, and it doesn't matter whether it's good or bad, it's change. And so, people need time to assimilate and to adapt to a new reality, and that never goes smoothly, and certainly doesn't go with a standing ovation.
I want to double click on that real quick, Jon, because as Keith mentioned, you weren't an outlier having a big team.
No.
Keith and I are working with a client right now where we're kind of suggesting, hey, there's maybe a few people that don't need to be on here all the time or in these meetings all the time. But Jon, how did you look at it? Because with this team, we kind of said, hey, leader, you want to think about those few people that you want to hear from, that you trust their opinion, even if it's different from yours, to make the best decisions on most of the topics that come up. Certainly there are going to be some outliers where you might need to bring in this person within the company or this other person within the company. But who's that group of people that will help you make decisions on most of the issues? Is that how you looked at it, or how did you think about going from 18 to 6?
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, it was fairly straightforward to start with, because we have a group of general managers at the clubs that operate those facilities. That's a group. So I looked at it in terms of what are my groupings of people in some respects. And I have a group of national directors, national sales, national fitness, national tennis, national food and beverage. I have a group of national directors, national facilities director. So I had two sort of distinct groups that I could identify. And then I had the other corporate functions, marketing, sort of IT, finance, HR, those sort of things. And so I sort of put them in buckets and said, okay, well, I can have somebody. If I have the general managers on team one, I can't have anybody else. So it's like, okay, so I need a representative for them. So they have to report to somebody, and that somebody is generally an operations director or a VP of operations in our case. Yeah. And so that has to be a person. So I just put we did a circle, and I drew that little circle in my orbit, and that had the 8 general managers reporting into that person. So that took 8 off the table straight away. I'm down to 10, and then I looked at the national directors and said, okay, so if I have these are like product specialists. So I have a group of product specialists, which is really about our membership experience. So I had I did another little circle and said, well, this is membership experience person or product person. That needs to be represented somehow. Otherwise, they're all on my executive team, and I don't have any more space for anyone else. And then it was really like, who else do I need who's influential in here? I've got to have our head of finance, because CFO, because I need to keep the track of the finances pretty closely. We have a number of different investments and different investment businesses that we are involved with. I needed talent. I needed a head of HR, although at the time I wasn't convinced that some of our people were the right people to put on this team. And so that was really some of the other challenges. So it was like I need to have somebody overseeing finance, IT, people, marketing, and sales. And when you start crafting your team, sometimes the people that you have in those roles aren't strategic thinkers or aren't the people that you think should be on that team. And that makes it really hard, because you have to then go to that person and say, look, not only do I not think you're a good fit for my executive leadership team, I think I need to replace you. Yeah. And so, because what you're bringing to the table isn't at that level, and I need someone at that level who's a strategic thinker, who's able to look at the business in its whole, in the whole, not in its niche little area. And you have to be able to play nice in the sandbox with the other people on this team and understand that we have one goal, and it's a core accountability that everyone has to hold true. And you just don't work that way. So, it was really, it was a real challenge. It was really difficult. But that was, to me, that was almost like an eye-opener. It was like being, in some cases I've been because I had 18 direct reports, I had everyone pigeonholed. And because they would just stay in your silo, stay in your lane, do what you're good at, it was okay. But as soon as you asked them to take on a bigger role and a bigger responsibility, that it highlighted weaknesses in those in a couple of those people, and resulted in us having to make some changes at the executive level with people who had been there in the company for 20 plus years.
What was interesting about that process, and you just walked through that criteria of, like, you thought long and deep about the functional representation, but then you thought about who's a strategic thinker, like whose advice would I value, and then you thought about those values. Who are the people that are going to show up behaviorally the right way. And what I remember about that moment was how quickly you were able to identify the people that you invited to the team. They just stood out.
Yeah.
And then it was a process of inviting them up to that level. And, what I get excited about when I think about Midtown is some of the people that you elevated to that role and how they've just really risen to the occasion and have become stronger, better, more strategic, better example, better models, because, and I'm not sure they ever would have gotten there had you not created that different structure.
Yeah, I think creating the environment for them to operate within, I think, has been really crucial. I mean, elevating people within the organization has always been something that we've tried to do. It goes back to my days in the rugby union. You try to create development pathways. You try to get people to be better than themselves all the time. And so elevating people within the business was always one of my key aims. But, we've also evolved that executive team over the past 2.5 years since we first worked together. That team isn't the same as it was when we first started. We've had a couple of people who have opted out. We've had somebody retire, and we've had a couple of people we've let go as well. And so it's evolved, it's developed, and I think we're at a stage now where we are really feeling that we have a strong team. We have a very solid core to grow the business from and to lead the business forward. I'm really excited about the team we've got now, but it's an evolution. It doesn't stop just because you do it once doesn't mean you're done.
Yeah, that's great. And then so that's discipline one in our org health structure. Building a cohesive leadership team. Talk about discipline two, which is creating clarity, answering the questions: why do you exist? How do you behave? What is it that you do? How will you succeed? What's most important right now, and who does what? Talk about the work that you did with that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the key with this was really for us. We started with a platform that we already had developed. We had a mission statement, so to speak, which we felt really good about, and we had some core values that we also felt we'd done a lot of work to develop. But we're probably. Once we started doing some more research we found that they didn't help us create clarity. They sort of some of the words weren't quite as clear as we thought they were. And when you have to put a definition behind a core value, that's not a good start. So we were able to start from a base that I felt pretty good with. And a lot of the work was taking words out of statements.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So why do we exist? Was everybody in the room was like, okay, well, we think we here's our mission statement. We think this is fairly good, but it was a couple of sentences, and it wasn't a statement per se. And so we were able to hack the words out of it and still hit a home run, I think, on what we wanted people to believe and to believe in, and what we want people to come to work for every day.
Yeah.
And so, I think that was part of that work was already done.
Yeah.
But the toughest part was defining it tightly and then keeping it really tight, a very, very tight definition. And likewise with the core values. The core values, we had a set of core values. When we started asking questions about them, we found that, look, people's definition of some of those words wasn't the definition that we had. So my definition was different than somebody else's. And well, if we have to define a value, a core value, so that you understand what it is, it probably isn't a core value. Or it probably needs to be rewritten in some format that makes it easier for people to understand. So I think creating clarity is all about that. It's understanding that you can get alignment and engagement behind these things, but people have to know exactly what they mean. And so wordsmithing these things is really important, and it's something that shouldn't be taken lightly.
That's great. One of the things that I remember working with you on too, that and Keith was there, of course, was that first key influencers meeting that we had, and you mentioned this earlier, but talk about that and how important that was in getting the message out. The idea that you're talking about people within the organization, but outside of the leadership team, that have your back and believe in what the leaders are doing to run the organization.
Yeah, that was a really important meeting. We set that up about a year in, I think. It was probably at the end of our first year.
Yeah.
Where we wanted to get all of the leadership teams from all of the clubs together in one room. So we pulled in all of our. So what we did is with our leadership teams was we created the same leadership team that we had at the executive team level in every organization, in every club in the organization. And so at the end of that year, we finally felt we had the cohesive teams set up in each club and at the executive level, and then also at the department levels that are in the corporate office. So we had those teams then built in marketing, and we had leadership teams in IT and in finance. And so we felt that we had a good way to cascade all the messages and the communication. We had it all structured the way we wanted it. And so getting them together enabled us to then say, okay, here's where we were. This is the path we've been on this year. This is what we did last year. This is why it wasn't working. This is, and the ability for a leader to be humble in front of his entire, company's leadership team at the next level down is really important. And you can, look, you have the position of authority and power. You can say what you want, do what you want in some respects, but you owe it to the people that you're asking to run through walls for you to be authentic and to be humble. And so I was able to stand up in front of everybody and say, look, this is a better way forward for everyone, for the company, for you, for me, for everyone. And I'm sorry it's taken me this long to realize it. I'm a slow study, but give me a chance. We're going to move this forward. That opportunity to then go around and talk to everybody, just privately, quietly, in breaks, sit at tables and listen to their conversations, and listen, as we were trying to craft their messages and their battle plans and their direction forward. And here's what our purpose is, and here's what our core values are, and here's why it's important that we performance manage on this, that we recruit on this, and that we terminate on this too. These are our core values. This is important. We believe these are important. And if you don't believe these are important and you don't believe our purpose is important, then you're going to get really sick of hearing it from us, and you'll probably want to go and look for something else, because I'm going to drive you mad the number of times I say this. Because the next part of this, of the 4 disciplines of a healthy organization, is me becoming the chief repetition officer.
Yeah.
And that is something that I take very seriously. And it's something I've learned the hard way. That I thought that everyone was following me, and I turned around, there's no one there, because I told them once that we're going in this direction, but that's not enough. And I'm like, well, wait, where is everybody? I've learned the hard way. I've learned through failure that you just have to keep saying it over and over again. And every presentation I make, every meeting I have, every meeting I drop into at the moment on Teams, if I don't mention the core purpose or our core values, shame on me, because that's what people need to hear. This is why we do it, and this is how we do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing, John, that stands out. So we encourage every leader we work with, like, hey, you've got to own this. Nobody ever needed to tell you that. I remember after the first meeting that we were on with you, the first time we checked in with you after that first offsite, like you had already been out to, a number of the clubs. You had already rolled this out. And, long prior to when you had done this key influencers event, you personally went to each of those clubs and you taught them the meeting model and you helped the senior leader kind of whittle down what's the right executive team. So like that, the idea that the leader of the organization needs to own this and to model it and talk about it. One of my favorite lines that you shared with us, I would love to have you just comment on how you came up with this idea. But, when it comes to the clarity, you said, I right away sat down and had to figure out, I need an elevator version of this and I need a TED Talk version of this. Could you just expand on that? Because I think I've shared that idea with so many leaders.
Yeah, it's it comes from my sales background, I guess. Background in selling things. If I've got 30 seconds of your time, I need to give you a succinct, pitch on what I'm selling to you, what you're buying, what I'm asking you to buy into. And there are lots of conversations in the clubs or in the office where I'm not in a meeting with everybody. I don't have the time to give to every single meeting and every single department. But what I do is I walk the halls, or I walk the gym, or I walk the basketball court, the tennis courts, and I pop into offices. I drop in on people, and because I want people to see me, I want people to know me, and I want them to know it's important to me. And so if I've got 30 seconds, I've got to get my message across, and it really is about why we do things. It really is our core purpose and our core values, and that's my elevator pitch. And then can I expand that to a TED Talk? 30 minutes. If I'm in a meeting, I get by dint of my position, I get to take over the meeting sometimes, and I got to use that wisely. I've got to be able to say, this is what we're doing. This is our core purpose. These are our core values. This is why it's important. And this is what my expectations are of you and how we're going to deliver this. And this should be your expectations of me as a leader as well. And so it works both ways, but you're building that level of vulnerability-based trust in those conversations. And you can't always build trust in 30 seconds, but you can make a start as to why it's important. And you can be humble. You can say, look, I don't have all the answers. I'm figuring this out as well. I'm asking you to come along the ride with me, come on the journey with me, and help me, and help us all be better. Help me be better, help us be better, and I want to help you be better. So that was really the concept. Was I get different time frames with people.
Yeah.
Hey, Jon, you were pretty honest earlier about like you're a premium brand, right? Your memberships aren't cheap. I would also say that, Keith and I should be honest, like this work takes some investment, right? Like not only in just Keith and I coming out there and joining you, but also in terms of days with your leadership team all together. So talk to us about like, how would you quantify the ROI or the impact of this work prior to COVID? Like when life was normal, how would you answer that?
I think what it did is it enabled us to get aligned behind key initiatives and key projects and get things done faster, move the business forward. Pre-COVID, we were on a record year. We were tracking, our financial year. Historically, we've just changed it actually because of COVID, but historically it was July 1 through June 30. Okay. And so when this hit, we were literally 2/3 of the way through the financial year, and we were on track for a record year, as we had been the year before. I'm not sure I'm going to attribute everything to the Table Group, but certainly what it did was help us, help me, and help us really focus on the most important things.
Now transition that to the time that you're in now during COVID. And I sometimes am like, do we bring up COVID now? Like, are we tired of talking about it? Yet
No.
it's still affecting you folks big time.
Oh yeah, big time. So here's one of the key learnings for us of the benefits of the table group. For anyone who's listening who hasn't taken on or haven't done anything about this, this is my one plug for you guys. So I'm going to give you a plug here.
All right.
Is that we were able to navigate the shutdowns. We were shut down as a business in March. So first we got shut down in Montreal on a Friday night. We got notified on Friday night that we weren't allowed to open on Saturday morning. So we got Friday at 6:00. We got notification from Quebec, from the Minister for Health in Quebec, that we weren't allowed to open on Saturday, and we were going to be shut down for at least 4 weeks. Fast forward, we're still shut down. It's now been 9 months, nearly 10 months. That was followed by a Sunday press conference in New York, where Governor Cuomo shut down upstate New York, Rochester Club on the Monday. So we were, both times we were given sort of 12 to 24 hours notice. With all of our staff, we employ full-time and part-time around 2,000 staff across the company. And then that started the whole roll-on effect. The Illinois clubs were next a couple of days later, and then it was, we were proactive in closing down Atlanta, Georgia, and Florida. And so we, as an executive team, were meeting twice a day anyway. We'd ramped up our meeting schedules during March because of COVID, because of the things we were seeing and hearing coming from overseas. And we already had that structure in place to make decisions. So we were talking a lot. We were having debate. We were discussing. There was a lot of heated debate about should we or shouldn't we close down? What do we do with staff? Do we furlough staff? Do we keep them on? How long can we keep them on for? What's the cash burn rate of that? How much money have we got to survive and stay alive through this, whatever long this period would be? And none of us knew. And there was no information. There were a number of people in our industry that thought we'd be shut down for 2 weeks and we'd be back open again in 2 weeks' time. We'd seen, I had the benefit I have of having worked in Europe and in Australasia is that I have a lot of contacts over there. In Europe and Asia, we're getting hit hard, and we're closing clubs down and closing businesses down for 4, 6, 8 weeks, 12 weeks. So we made we were able to throw that into our decision-making process. We were set up pretty well for the discussion, the debate, the conflict. We'd already established vulnerability-based trust. We knew we could throw sticks and stones at each other, and we wouldn't take it personally. We were trying to find the right truth and the right answer, and so we were able to come to decisions and move quickly on that and communicate effectively. We already had the cascade. We had the structures in place that we'd put in place the year before at all the clubs with all of the leadership teams, that we were able to communicate the decision and the why. Yeah.
Well, Jon, you've been great, and really appreciate your time. And I love how you brought in, how we talked about you building your team and creating clarity, over communicating that with the key influencers and throughout the organization, and you calling yourself the chief reminding officer, and then reinforcing it in your human systems you mentioned, and the impact it's had on you folks, and then the impact it's had even now during COVID, when clearly some tough times in your industry for sure.
Yeah, I think for sure it's been difficult, but I think the other side of this is, we have the structure now. We had our offsite last week, January, and we have built out new battle plans. We've recommitted for the next 12 months or 9 months, and we believe there's going to be an uptick in our industry, and we believe it's going to be positive in the back end of this year. I think it'll probably be post summer when we start to see a real swing as people want to take care of themselves and their health and their well-being, and we're excited to be on the front line of that, and we're just preparing for it, and we have the structure to do it.
Awesome. Well, hey, we wish you all the best of luck. We admire your leadership and all the things you're doing there at Midtown, and we hope 2021 ends up being way better than 2020.
Thank you very much. I'm anticipating it to be a lot better as well, and look forward to seeing you guys again soon and catching up soon.
All right. Thanks so much for your time, John.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Org Health Advantage. Your hosts, Keith and James, are helping leaders change the world of work and invite you to share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. For more resources on building stronger teams and organizational health, check out tablegroup.com.
Produced by Audavita Studios. Connect your voice to the world.